Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are at. This is Friday Features, and I'm Amanda with Blue Highway Games, and every Friday I stream a kind of quick show about 5 games that sort of go together with a theme, and this week I am featuring train games, which a lot of people have a lot of feelings and hold them very dear to their heart, and so I just want to start off by saying right away that I am not a true train game fan, and if that wasn't obvious by the ones I have chosen, usually for those fans out there, 18XX or the Empire Builder series of crayon games or Railroad Tycoon are the train games that come to the forefront of their minds. They're usually kind of really big, strategic, long duration in play, but very much well designed, and there's a whole series of many from either those 3 series, and a lot of other games kind of take from those elements. The only one that has ever really kind of drawn me a little bit are the crayon games, because you can draw on the map with crayons because that sounds fun, but usually anything where you are buying stocks and then getting punished for not having stocks 6 hours later makes me sad, because I'm usually not strategic enough to know how to play those early on. I should probably just play them more than one time, and then they might appeal to me. I probably have forgotten all the lessons that I have learned from my previous attempts, however. So I am not a true train game fan. I do apologize to anyone watching that loves all of those really meaty, heavy train games. These are not those. Though there are some that might have shades from those other games, including something that involves buying and selling of stocks, which is exciting. But I also, as usual, have picked out a family game to start us off, and so I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. Do let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll try to keep an eye on that as well. And the first game that I'm going to show you is actually the one I've got on camera this week, and that is Ticket to Ride First Journey. And people may be familiar with Ticket to Ride, which is a very well-known series of family train game that is more like playing Rummy than it is 18X games. But the idea is you are going to have tracks on a map, and there are trains to be placed down. In the bigger version, the map is a lot more detailed. There's a lot more spaces. The trains are smaller. Things are harder to connect on your ticket cards. So if you're not familiar with Ticket to Ride, that's sort of you're collecting sets of colored cards to match spaces on the board to be able to put down your trains. So if I wanted to go on this space right here, let's say I'm green with my green train, I would need to discard 1 red card, and I could put out my train onto that track. And in the bigger version, there are a lot more of these routes, and not quite so, some of them are like 8 or 9 spaces long. These are, I think the max is 3 in this junior version. It's for ages 6+, and it uses some of those basic principles. You still have the cards, you still have the routes, you still have the trains, but the tickets are a little bit more straightforward. They're not very large, so like Madrid to Rome, I don't know if I have those on, should have found routes that I actually had visible on my screen here, but we have, no, Madrid's over there, but there's only going to be 2 spaces in between you and your route on most of these, so they're not overly, yeah, here we go, Rome to Riga, that's a big one. That's going to be 3 different routes, so you'd need 1 white card, 1 black card, and 2 blue cards. Just like in the big game, there are engine cards that are going to be wilds, and you can see they've got all the colors pictured on there, so you would only need, where's the blue? So this, a blue and a wild, would allow me to connect onto these spaces with my trains. So I would take my trains, I guess I'm yellow now, and I would connect those 2 spaces. Once I had a line of my trains between the 2 destinations, it doesn't have to be in a straight line. It could have gone more meandering across the board because of other routes I was trying to claim, like so. That would still be considered connected. I'd be able to claim this card. Unlike the main version where you kind of keep your cards a secret, in this junior version, you've always got 2 cards in your hand, and when you complete a route, you place it face up to claim the route. There are no points to keep track of. You don't have to remember how many points each route is worth. You're just trying to be the first person to complete 6 of these cards. Now there is, instead of the longest route, there is a card, oh, again, I don't have the whole board picture, it's quite large. There's an eastern side and a western side, and if you can connect your trains somehow across the board from the east to the west, you'll be able to claim one of those 4 trains across Europe card and claim the points from that. It would count as one of your 6 ticket cards, and you're really just racing to get to those number of tickets. Now, it is a lot faster than a regular game of Ticket Ride, which can take upwards of an hour, hour and a half if you're playing with lots of people, and it's a little bit more cutthroat as far as which routes are going to be claimed. This one, if you are unable to play either of your ticket cards, that is when you get new tickets. As a turn, you would discard both and claim 2 new ones. Otherwise, it's sort of just an exchange. When you complete one, you get a new one. And so the turns, again, are streamlined. The gameplay is more like 20 minutes to 30 minutes at the most for younger players, which is great. So their attention span's not lost. And the trains, of course, are the really big, fun, chunky trains. Yeah, I mean, they still look small, but the other ones are even smaller. So these are bigger for smaller hands. So that is Ticket Ride's first journeys. There's 2 versions, both of which we're going to put on sale through next Thursday at 20% off. Normally it's $34.95, so you'll be saving 20% on either the US map or the Europe map for kids. And then it won't be very long before they'll be able to then probably graduate up into the larger game after a few years. But you'd still get quite a bit of play out of this as well. And it's even fun as adults that like Ticket Ride but don't want to give up very much time and just want to have a filler. You can play this really quickly too. All right. I managed to find, well, not find, it's not like it's a secret, roll and rights that are also train games. And so I wanted to feature both Railroad Inks that are currently out. Wait for it. This is very exciting. Blue and red. And if you are not familiar with either of them, they are essentially the same game in 2 different colored boxes, but each box comes with its own set of special die that create a variation for that color. So you kind of have to have both. You don't really, but they're fun. So the red die, those are variants. Those are not required for the base game, and there's blue ones in the blue box. In both games, both sets, you're going to get the regular 4 roads and rail die. So there are some roads and there are some rails. When it's the start of each round, you're going to roll all the die. All the players are required to draw all 4 of the symbols onto their player board. So there's a bunch of these for all players. They have fun, different illustrations on each one, which is just aesthetic. The boards themselves are the same. You get your board. You kind of, you're like keeping it a secret, but you can kind of hide behind the screen there as you're drawing the things onto the squares. As you can see, this is the well-loved library copy, although I was impressed to see that these still work, considering it's been in our library for years, before the pandemic. And so you would have to draw 4 of those shapes. You'd have to draw like, that's a train that connects to a road, or a T of a road. And what you're trying to do is connect the exits with each other. So you want to have a systematic system of roads and rails that goes out the exits. At the end of the game, you will score points for how many exits are in one complete unit. You might have 2, maybe 3 different units. And then there's sort of a little chart that tells you how you would score points. So for a really large connection, I think that's all. If you connect all the exits, you get 45 points. The bulk of the points come from that. You do also get points for building in the middle section. You can't really see it on here, but it's a different shade. So you want to build your tracks or your roads out here into the center, because that will also score you points. And then you also get points for your longest connected single section of rail and for road, and you just count up how many spaces that takes. So all players are doing this simultaneously. You're not waiting for your turn. You can all act at the same time on your player board, following those 4 white dice. And that's the same for the blue and the red box. But what they've done is they've given you 4 extra die, 2 separate colors, because there's 2 separate expansions. When you add them in, there's slightly different rules that you follow that add some more variation to the things that you're drawing on your board, other than just trains and roads. So for this one, this is actually lava, and you would draw a little volcano, so you can test your little volcano drawing skills. Do you want to see my volcano drawing skills? Maybe we don't, but maybe we do. Ooh. Okay, so there, a little volcano. And then as I roll these die, you'd have to fill in lava around there, or I think it's, you are trying to encase different pools of lava, because you will get points for enclosed spaces. You also, so you don't want your lava spreading out into one large pool. You get points for your smallest lava pool's size. So if you have 2 or 3, or one big one and then a second one that's quite large, that would be good, because you get some points from that. Then there's also the meteors, which are coming from outer space. One die will tell you which direction to move from the last rolled placed meteor on your board, and how many spaces. So up, left, right, down, or your choice. And then you would draw a meteor in that space. Now, if there's already a item there, a railroad track or a road, you have to implode it, it explodes. But later you're able to come into those areas. You're actually going to be able to harvest minerals and resources that have come from outer space and landed on the planet. So that's actually good. So it's bad that it destroys what you've already built, but it might end up being good in the end, that you can harvest from what has happened in your little area. The blue and white die, the two blue, the light blue and the dark blue die in the blue box, are a little bit more straightforward, less destructive. So if you're not into maybe more destructive lava or meteors, you're building rivers and lakes, and the rivers and lakes cannot connect to the exits, but you're trying to still be connected paths that cross your board, and you score for the size of river that you have at the end, and if it connects off to the edges without going to an exit. And then the lakes itself, it has little docks that you're trying to build in, which can give you extra places to connect your railroad tracks and roads, and it will also consider, if I'm on this side of the lake and I can connect to this side of the lake, it would make those connected for those exits and those points. So that is the difference between these two. They're really the same game, but with extra variants in either one. There are 2 new colors coming out soon, yellow and green. I know nothing about them other than it reminded me that how much I loved these ones that came out in 2018, which feels like so long ago now. That's railroading. Either one of these is normally $19.99, but it'll be 20% off until the 25th, I believe, is next Thursday. Now I don't know where to put these without them being in the way. I'll go over here. All right, the next one I have up is unfortunately more of a party game. It wasn't really one that, I mean, you could play it with 2. There's variations of rules for 2, but you want to have a full set of table for this. So this is one to keep in mind for post-pandemic, or if you have a lot of people in your bubble or at home. Colt Express. This is one that is very different from most board games, especially from most train games, because there's not routes and track and a map. There is actually a 3-dimensional train that is on your table. So this train is going to be pulled by this little engine car, which it's going to work so well to show this here. There's a top and a bottom, and then the number of cars based on the number of players that you have. Strung out behind this, again, is a very loved copy, but they link together. And so there's lots of these little guys with different icons on them. And then you're going to have your little outlaws that are going to rob the train. So the train is set up in the center of the table. There's going to be treasures placed on there. And this part I might not be able to show you, but there's a little indicator of how much loot is going to go on each of these cars. The riches of the rich passengers on each of these little cars. And the game is the outlaws are going to rob the train, and you're those outlaws. There is a marshal that's hanging out in the front of the car guarding a briefcase of $1,000 in cash. Probably trying to hook up with a Wells Fargo wagon or something. But the game is a programming game done with cards. So at the start of the game, you sort of place your little outlaws in the train, marshals there in the front, and then you're going to have a set of round cards depending on the number of players. So they give you kind of different things. So this would be 3 open rounds. This one's gonna have a tunnel. You don't know what that means yet. So you have a round card that's out, and players are going to play cards from their hand. Oh, did I mix those in? No. Right. Oh, yes, I did. Oh, I did. So everybody has their player board for their outlaw and their deck of cards. So I have Doc here. I have Doc's deck, and it's going to have some actions in it, and it's going to have some bullets. Well, actually, the bullets are off to the side. They're not in my deck, but I have a hand of cards, and on my turn, I am going to play down 1. I'd say it's my turn. I play it down, but nothing happens on the train yet. I see that my little guy, although this isn't blue, pretend he's blue. My little guy is on the top of the train here, and I'm going to move to the left or right. When I'm inside the train, I can move 1 car to the other. When I'm on the roof of the train, I can run faster. I could go up to 3 spaces to that end of that train, so you're moving faster up there. But nothing happens. I don't actually move. I just play it down, and then the next person goes, and they play a card on top of my card in kind of a central pile area until everybody's played their 1 card for that first part of the round. Then still nothing happens. I'm going to play again. Well, I have been trying to remember what everybody was planning on doing, and then I think, oh, well, awesome. I should go ahead and jump down inside the train, because now I've moved my 3 spaces over. I think Joe's gonna try to go over to that car and claim that awesome treasure. This gem worth $500. And so I'm gonna hop down. So my turn will be to hop down. But again, nothing happens on the train. We're all just trying to program this out in our mind and figure out what everybody's doing based on the cards that they're playing for the round. Now this one, when we get to our 3rd card that we're all playing down in turn order, we'll actually go in reverse player order. So all I played first, now Joe's gonna react to my reaction, so maybe I'm sad because he saw what I was gonna do before I had a chance to play another card. And then they'd all go down. Once we have reached the end of the turn, then the first player is going to take the whole deck as is without shuffling or changing the order, flip it over, and then we're going to flip it up and things will start to happen. So you flip it up, it's my card, it's blue, I have to move. I am required to do the card that I played. As I can see later in the deck, I may have made some mistakes. So when I move down, if the marshal is actually somehow now below me, I can never be in the same car as the marshal. I get scared, I pop back up. And not only that, he shoots me, but someone else may have shot me with their gun card, or punched me, or taken my treasure, or all sorts of different things can happen throughout the round based on the cards that you're playing down. There are, again, a whole stack based on number of players of different sets of actions. Sometimes you're going through a tunnel and you can't see what people are doing, so you actually play your actions upside down. So they will not be revealed until the deck is flipped up, so you don't know what people are doing. You just have to kind of guess and suppose based on where the treasure and everything is on the train. And then there's also events that happen that change at the end of the round, like the marshal might shoot everybody on the train one time. And you have those bullet cards I mentioned earlier, so when you're doing the shooting or the sheriff's doing the shooting, you're gonna have to add these into your deck, which make it harder for you to have a handful of cards to do stuff because you're injured because you've been shot so many times on this outlaw train. So it is a train game because it is set on a train, though it is a far departure from your average train game where you're collecting stocks and building routes on a map. That is Colt Express. It has been out for a few years. It's a very popular game. If you haven't heard it, I hope this kind of showed you that it's really awesome, though you do kind of want to have a lot more people just because of the fun nature of everybody doing crazy stuff, and it's harder to keep track of who's going to go where. It is normally $40. It'll be 20% off through this coming Thursday, so for about a week. All right, so let me not injure these trains as I put them back carefully in the box. All right, I got a couple more. They're a little bit more on the big end. We have Whistle Stop, which is kind of one that flew under the radar a few years ago, and I played it a couple times when it first came out. I was like, this is awesome. Why are more people not talking about it? Because it's a lighter train game. It's not as light as Ticket to Ride or Ticket to Ride First Journey, especially, but it doesn't have a whole lot of the familiar mechanics of a train game, but it still definitely takes a lot from those games. It's a little bit wackier, and that might be perhaps why it wasn't as beloved by train lovers. Because the board itself is just a frame that you're going to set up around in a square that has a few setup tiles set up in the beginning, and they're going to have different depots where you can get stock in certain trains, see stocks, and even has a stock market where you'll get points based on the stocks you've already collected. See, stock, train game. But the tracks themselves aren't really like a map of the US or a map of even a planet in outer space. They're wacky and crazy and kind of reminded me of Suro, if you've ever played that, where you're moving your little pieces around, and they're kind of wacky, and you can see that kind of on the edge of the board. You may end up moving your train in kind of weird directions in order to collect the resources that are on these tiles, to be able to take them and exchange them for well, did I show that? The city. Oh, the city. I'd have to exchange a brown and a white, and I get 5 points, and I gain some stock. However, if I don't have that, I just lose some points. So you want to be collecting the resources before you wiggle your way into one of these stations, and you're trying to advance your way across the board to the finishing tiles. So as the board gets filled up with tiles, you're all advancing. I think you have like a different number of trains based on the number of players, and you can't land on the same spot as someone else. You can go through. You're spending coal to get through those spaces, so you've got piles of coal and also whistles, because this is whistle stop, which allow you to go a little bit further. These little train whistles. I should have found. I know there's a train whistle somewhere at the store, but I don't know where to blow it. Now I have regrets. So a little train whistle allows you to move a little bit further. Oh yeah, there's some fun gold that you can collect, and they're in face down piles, and you might get lucky and get more points than you thought you were. The resources are fun little chunky wooden cubes, which I'm always a fan of, and of course I want to show you the little trains, because I showed you the other Ticket to Ride trains than a big train, but here we've got some classic wooden train meeples that will go out and travel around those little wacky paths. You also have the ability to exchange some resources to get some helps. You can steal these helps from other players, which I think is a particularly fun, mean element, because I like my mean games. But this one says if I pay my 2 brown cubes, my 2, I don't know what resource that is, probably clay. I don't know, wood, lumber. At the end of the game, if I still hold this, I'll get 3 points. But until then, I'll be able to exchange a coal for moving an extra tile. The tiles themselves, I think that's what that is. I should have looked that up. The tiles themselves will be in your hand. There's kind of a little market, like Ticket to Ride, if you're familiar with that. Like cards, you pick them up, you have a hand of these on your turn. You're able to choose which ones you want to play and where in front of your trains to try to move into those spaces. So that is Whistle Stop. It's not overly long or overly complicated, though more complex than Ticket to Ride, but definitely still not quite up there with those heavy train games. The stocks that you're accumulating, you can just kind of exchange those for some points based on the number that you hold. At the end of the game, you'll have to aim to land at this particular station, but you'd be able to get some points there as well. And then I think it's been a while, but at the end of the game, I think you get points for whoever has the most of any particular stock. But you can't get them unless you go to the spaces that have that specific city that offers, or that rail place. So coast to coast and coast to coast. Okay. Whistle Stop. I just want to play it now. If I had game night, I think this would be what I would want to play as a nostalgia moment. We have limited copies of this because I think it's now long enough that it may be going out or out of print. So if you are interested in this one, definitely call the store and get in on that sooner rather than later. All right, I have one more train game for you, and this is the newer one that my coworker was really excited about and told me I should play it, and then the pandemic hit and I didn't play it. Then my other coworker told me I should play it and I didn't play it, and then I took it home and I read the rules and I was so excited to play it. But it's 3 to 5 players, so confession, I haven't actually played this game. We kind of did a little mock 2-player, but it doesn't quite capture the feel of that 3-player game. but I'm still going to talk about it because we set it up and gave it a little go. But it really does need 3 to 5 players. But it's called Irish Gage, and it is from Capstone Games, and it is kind of a nice little thin box. I really liked it, and has really, I don't know, calming, soothing, maybe not the right word, pastel art. No, that's not even right. The whistle stop is pastel art. But it's sort of a, I don't know, maybe 1960s graphic design. I'm not sure. But it's a map of Ireland, Irish Gage. And so you play on the whole map. I'm just going to hold up this one section here. And this is probably the closest to those other big train games. But the reason my coworkers knew that I would like this one is the rules are double-sided, single sheets. And it is not complicated. It is very streamlined, but it has all those elements. It's truly hexes, which is very classic train game look. And it's got cities, and you're connecting with your... These are not as big as Whistle Stop because you've got to put more on the board, but they're very similar little... Oh, you can't really see that. They're tiny. It's hard to even hold them. Little trains. The cities will have commodities on them, which are the resources. The colors are black, pink, and white, so not overly complicated. There's only 3 of them. The main ones start with one at the beginning of the game. You may place some later in the game. And then there are stocks based on the color of railroads. And the object of the game is to build out a path of the same color train, have stocks in that color that go through certain cities when they are pulled out for their dividends from the bag, which is kind of a randomizing factor. But the turns are quite straightforward. There's an auction to start the game, so everyone has 1 stock, or maybe more, but one of each stock from each color is auctioned off. Then on your turn, you can choose to auction another one of the stocks. There's not very many of them. Some only have 2 per color, some have 3, I think 1 or 2 have 4. And or you can choose to build out the train lines, and there are rules for how they are placed. If they're going with another train, it's going to be extra points. You have a set number of points, 3, to spend on your turn when you build a train. You can build 1, 2, or 3 at the very most if you're building in open green land that's very easy with no other trains. But if you're going on any of these difficult spaces, it's going to cost 2 of your 3 points. If somebody else is there, you're going to cost 1.5 of your points. If you're trying to go into cities or villages, also going to cost some extra points. So how you spend your 3 points is based on, you can spend and build any of the color trains. Then if any of the major cities are all connected by 1 color, there's going to be a special dividend that pays out to all the shareholders of that particular color of train. You're going to add up the values of the towns and the cities. Towns are 2 and cities are 4, and their total values divided by all the shareholders. So it is got a lot of the elements of having to hold shares and building up the rail tracks, but it is so streamlined. So it was something for someone like me who finds that the longer, big, heavy, meaty, wonderful train games are just not for me. This was something that allows me to experience the auctions of buying stock and building out my rail tracks without having to spend too much time. Now, of course, we didn't play a full game, so maybe it takes 7 hours. I doubt it. I think the box doesn't tell me. Oh no, it does. This is 60 minutes. So if it takes 7 hours, you're probably doing something wrong. It definitely did not feel like it was going to take that long. And you could have played, we could have played a whole game with 2 players, but just knowing that it was built and designed for 3, we just didn't want to spend the time. So asterisks, haven't really played it, but it definitely was going to be able to capture the flavor of that train game and kind of the closest to some of those big meaty 18xx or Empire Builder train games without quite as much time being spent. The money itself is really straightforward, like in cards. The stocks themselves are these just bright, colorful little things, and then of course a whole bunch of trains that you can spread out in all the different colors, as well as it does give you this. Oh, it does give you this handy little chart down here, which helps you figure out how much of each of the trains are going to be worth. So that when you pull out, say, a black cube, you can see, oh, there's a black city, yellow goes through that, as well as this one up here, so we can score it. and that goes through, 2 other villages as well. You can set it to the price so that you can figure out how to divide it up among all the other players. Zwidar agrees with me here in chat that the length of time is the main thing that keeps them away from 18xx, which is for me also true. I'm probably also just bad at those games, so if I was doing better in them, I'm usually a game that takes 4 hours that I don't know that I'm doing poorly is good. But if I know that I've messed up in the first 15 minutes, I usually get pretty miserable by the end. But that's my own problem, and we all have things to work on. That will be mine. But this allows me to experience that in a shorter amount of time, which is good. All right, that is normally $39.99. I think we've ordered some more of those just to make sure we don't run out here this week, because that's a good one to pick up, and it'll be 20% off through the 25th. Well, feel free to tell me your favorite train games in comments on this video later on YouTube after it's posted, or even on our social media pages as we post reminders of which these are on sale this week. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that to see those if you missed the first part of this video, or you can check it out later as we post it again on YouTube. Well, I think I'm gonna go have some lunch, and I hope all of you out there are doing well and enjoying a snow-free day here in Seattle. All right, thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend.